from an owner standpoint, I would say it's just so dependent, right? Like if you want the availability and the convenience of having your gym in your tower, that's fantastic. But you're right, by and large, you'll see an uptick just like in any gym. You'll see an uptick right after people make their New Year's resolutions and it gets used a little bit more. But generally it's, Steve in 203 and, and he's the one hammering at the AGM to get a new treadmill in. Me individually, when I first bought into Strata, I wanted zero to no amenities because that requires zero to no maintenance and upkeep and
brings your costs down
out of my pocket.
Everyone's got a real estate story. Some are wins and some are total nightmares. We are here to give you the keys to what's really going on in Vancouver real estate, from what it actually takes to become a real estate agent to what it really costs to build a home and all the stories in between. This is the real estate of things, where nothing is off the table and everything is negotiable. My guest today, good friend and avid listener, obviously, of this podcast, Cory Pedersen, president, owner, CEO, I don't even know what you call yourself, of Stratawest, based here on the North Shore, but servicing Metro Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, all the neighboring areas, communities, things like that. Thanks for being a part of it.
It is your pleasure.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
This is fun. Strata is a huge thing. Obviously, there's so many condos in Vancouver and all this sort of thing. And people always have questions when we're going through buying, selling, things like that, and getting Strata documents. So it's great to kind of have a very educated, intelligent voice on this. So again, thanks for being a part of it. And, your background, let's just start there. That's kind of how I always like to start. How did you end up in Strata? What were you doing before? What kind of led you down this road?
Like a lot of people in this industry fell backwards into it. And that's a bit of a product of it even still not being as well known as it should be. Like real estate, this is clearly a real estate town. You in trading services and me on the Strata side, we share a regulatory body, a lot of the same re-educational programs that we have to take. And yet there's a real misunderstanding on what the heck we do on our side of the industry. So my mom was an operating room nurse. My dad was a sales rep for Levi's. I grew up really very excited about medicine. And I had a bit of access into that with my mom because she was an OR nurse. So she hooked me up with, surgeons and doctors. I used to go on rounds when I was in my teens. And that's always what I was going to do. So I went to school, took a Bachelor of Science degree, came out of that and needed to afford med school. So I needed a job. I actually thought I'd go into pharmaceutical sales reps just for a year or so. And no one was hiring. And I went to take a buddy out for a beer at a Strata management brokerage. This is pre-licensing. I'm in a suit. The VP saw me. They were really looking for anybody with a pulse at that point in time. And I had one. So I looked into it a little bit more and it seemed like a really good gig for a year. Unbelievable to look back on it. I think I was hired at 33.5, but it was a job that was explained to me that there was a commission base. I was correct in what I sort of took it to be, which was like a massive breadth of experience and challenges. So I think the days are going to go by pretty quickly. There's law, there's building science, there's engineering, there's a ton of public speaking. There's a lot of, having had a science background, I didn't have an awful lot on my resume, and I thought this is going to tick off a lot of boxes. I'm going to have a bunch of experience and then have some money to go to med school. And then as it turns out, I got into a car accident and had to pause that for a second. By the time I kind of had been rolling with this job for a bit and gotten back to it after the car accident, I was making sort of leaps and bounds in salary and responsibility. So, within 18 months or something, that 33.5 is doubled up to 65 or 68. This is decades pre-COVID. And I made VP and I'm like, I could stop. I'd go back to school and I was really such that you can enjoy this if you have a proper perspective on it and you're constantly learning and growing in the job. I identified Strata management industry as all but recession proof. I mean, there's cranes everywhere. And one of the major points I want to make here for your listener, the viability of this job as a career. It is a career that is second and third careers for people in the banking industry. I have 40 staff. I probably have two or three engineers, 2 ex-lawyers. It's an excellent second, third career. So it just happened to be my first.
Yeah. And taking a look around, like you said, there's cranes everywhere. And when you got that first job kind of through your friend, you obviously just saw the the growth potential working at that time for someone, but then also like, did you have aspirations to have your own company at that time? Or once you really got into it, like you obviously were like, oh man.
My first company it was really interesting because it was a single owner. It was really all he did. He was just so incredibly focused on this company.
Yeah.
Which the downside on the potential career in medicine, I knew the time, would I be giving up future family time and et cetera. I kind of look at it like a soundboard, like a studio soundboard where you push up the toggles on like accountability, responsibility, like you're in charge, you got to make payroll, all these things, but you also have like, freedom, lack of bureaucracy and agency over your life. So that was all super attractive to me.
And those individuals, like you said, they came from banking or they came from, different sales jobs, things like that. And you got a business degree?
No, I got a science degree.
Is it a prerequisite for the industry on people who would know? Do you need, like a lot of things, do you need a degree? It's obviously recommended for a lot of different things, but does the industry require that to become a Strata manager?
The barrier to entry is very low.
Okay.
The breadth of sort of personal characteristics and ability is very wide. It is not for everybody, for sure. I've hired some very, very impressive and capable people that washed out pretty quickly. But you do not need a degree. In fact, when I came into the industry, it was pre-licensing. And so the Strata Property Act dates back to, I think it's 2000. And I date back pre that. But licensing came in about 4 or 5 years thereafter. So when I joined, I had a degree. Most people seem to have a degree. Almost all of my people do. There's another couple of designations. There's a registered condominium management manager designation out of Ontario, board that I sit on, Strata Property Agents of British Columbia. We brought that to BC and about 50 people took it. It's a very in-depth course like on law, building sciences, et cetera, et cetera. So you can really build out your education base and your designations. But the bottom line is you can go to Sauder School of Business and sign up for Strata Management course. It's done online. You can do it at your own pace. I think you have a year to do it.
Yeah.
I've hired people at my previous firm. We had a real pipeline. So I'd hire like 3 young people at a time. I was the hiring guy. And so I was kind of looking for myself like, oh, that person's got a degree. They've learned how to learn. And now we've just got to teach them how to do this job. So you can crunch out this license in a matter of months if you really wanted to. And then you have to find a place to hang that license. And then you're off to the races. And so something to really underline here is, half of the province lives in Strata.
Is that the hard statistic on it?
Well, yeah, thereabouts.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thereabouts. And forgive me. I usually have, these numbers more top of mind from the committees and stuff I sit on. But roughly speaking, say there's 2,500 to 3,000 licensees. The numbers in the province, the entire province, we probably need 6,000 to 7,000 to do things at a comfortable level where people are managing.
So greatly underserviced.
Massively.
Yeah.
So the good news is the supply demand has never been stronger. So if you own a company in that and you do well in this industry, that's kind of where you want to be. Myself and my business partners are still out. We sit on committees. We talk to groups. We are banging pots and pans trying to get people into this industry because we want the industry to be healthy. We are a very sought after firm to work for. It's a very hard won reputation. You don't take my word for it. You can, and you being a realtor, we do get a lot of nice things said to us by realtors and referrals from realtors because they of course are dealing with all of the management companies and see the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. And talking about that, the people, like I say, ask the question about the education, and it's very similar to becoming a real estate agent, right? You sign up for the Sauder School of Business, the 1-year course. But the ones that can make it in the business, whether it be real estate or in the Strata side, you just got to have hard work and determination for it. And you guys see that in your interview process. And you can, like you say, you can kind of groom them for the job once they have that basic education and
100%.
And they can control their own path, so to speak, and have the growth, have the success within a company like yours, right?
Mm-hmm. My business partner, Jason, I've got 2 business partners now, but my initial business partner, Jason, he always goes back to the day that I interviewed him, and I refer to it as an eat what you kill job at some particular point, and that thing stuck with him because he had multiple job offers and took mine. And that's kind of a neat part of it. Everyone in it is constantly trying to sort of work their portfolio in some ways, I was going to say as large as possible, but as manageable as possible. So what I mean by that, we have one of the lowest ratios of properties to managers, but the hope would be throughout the industry, you were looking at around 8 to 10 properties per manager, but we see 15, 17, 20. I mean, just craziness. But within that, if you have some larger properties and some smaller properties, if you take on an additional property, obviously you're going to get a pay bump because that's how it works. But there's opportunities, maybe we land a 300 or 400 unit multi-tower complex, and that individual property manager can transfer out 2 or 3 properties and take on one. So now 1, 2, or 3 fewer financial statements to deal with, meetings per month, perhaps. So everyone's sort of trying to massage their own individual portfolio. They're kind of working their own business in incubation within the larger brokerage. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We, buy and sell condos all the time for clients, obviously. And, a common question, more so with the first time home buyers, things like that, if they're buying their first condo on the North Shore, downtown, wherever it might be, they look at how much the strata fees are, right? And they go, what is this, right? Yeah. And I mean, I think it's good to kind of give a snapshot of what strata management does for, a specific building. What do they do? Yeah.
Well, to take a step back, because I don't know that I've actually gotten this out of my mouth yet, but what we actually do is help administrate the strata corporation. And so you're essentially in a commune. You've bought a strata lot, which is a unit within this strata corporation. Everybody gets together and elects a strata council. And so they're in charge.
And they're owners.
But your hope there is you have some like-minded, kind, reasonable individuals who are going to work for the greater good. And they are the governance. They are the mini government. And then our job is to carry out their directions and so help administrate and implement whatever their decisions are. So it's actually a really key part of what we do and what sort of my initial training is because here we're dealing with the vast majority of people's largest investment, and it's their home.
Yeah.
Right. So it can be incredibly emotionally charged when things aren't going well, which tends to be when our phones ring. We're lucky enough to get the odd call saying, hey, you're doing a great job. But usually, something's leaking or there's an issue with a neighbor. And so we're the agent. So we train our people like, hey, we're here to help. We're talking to the strata councils like, here's our guidance. Here's our wisdom for whatever that's worth. Here's our experience. You might make a completely different decision. That's up to you. And they've got to live with that. So in dealing with the individual owners who you're referring to, who are trying to buy into these places, that's a key bit of the communication and expectation setting that our people do. It's like, that individual is eventually perhaps going to break a bylaw or be late on a payment, and they're going to get a letter and it's going to have one of my people's signature on the end of it. And if it's a real hot button topic, they're phoning, with a pretty big fastball coming. And it's like, we just calm them down as much as we can. It's like, hey, we've sent that on behalf of our client. I understand your position. And so that's a really effective thing to keep in mind is in terms of what our role is. We're the agent. We're just carrying out direction.
Yeah.
And so to the individuals who are buying into Strata, the Strata management company, there's one line item on the operating budget that says management services. That's us. It's typically about 4 down the depth chart from insurance, staffing, and probably repairs and maintenance. We are implementing and handling the contracts, all the vendors that work there, putting those out to tender if the council's not happy with the services that are being done. A Strata management brokerage is essentially a management company on one side and an accounting firm on the other. So we're doing all of the financial management.
Right.
We're a medium-sized firm. We probably have $120 million in trust. So everything like collecting and AR and paying the bills and doing all the investments, and huge amount of things to do. And it's ever growing. And there's fewer and fewer people who are good at doing it.
So what are some of the most common questions, to generalize it, that you guys get on people calling?
People get frustrated. Things take longer than they should. But unless that ball is sitting in our hands, if we've actioned the directives of the Strata Council and, something's with an engineering firm or with the vendor itself and everybody's backed up and everything costs more money. To back up a step, if we have a really good working relationship with that Strata Council and we've earned trust on both sides, we're working as a pretty efficient, well-run machine, and then complaints are explicable. It's like, if we have things in process and something's with the vendor and they're backed up, that's not our fault. If the person is hot and bothered because they've been fined for lack of payment of strata fees,
Yeah.
that's on you.
Yeah.
You know, we get a tremendous number of calls from tenants. Our particular firm is not involved in rental management. So this person is probably barking up the wrong tree. Our job traditionally has been, you know, doing the same things over and over and over again, answering the same questions. It has already been something that we've attacked with technology and tools, and it will continue to be a real positive in terms of making the job more efficient, other than having like my admin department answer the same questions over and over again. You know, AI bots and you know, cloud-based platforms that have, you know, the aggregated data. There's ways to do it far more efficiently. So the short and dirty answer, which I've not given here, you would hear in strata-related seminars, is those issues that people are getting hot and bothered about tend to be people, pets, and parking.
Yeah.
You know, those are just...
Pet's a huge one, right?
Yeah.
We get that all the time, and you know, it's a big part of the bylaws and things like that, and pet height and breed. You're there to enforce those bylaws, those rules. Technically, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's true.
But
At the direction of the Strata Council.
talking about the kind of navigating you were touching on there, and what we were saying earlier, there's cranes everywhere, developments happening everywhere in Vancouver. How often, or do you ever get involved with developers at the very beginning of a project, and they say, hey, we're going to build this, you know, 20-story high rise.
Yeah.
This is what we're thinking about for amenities, these sorts of things. Maybe you already have managed some of their developments that they've done over years past. We'd like to consult. What do you think of this? What are some problems that can arise if we do things like this? Is that something is also a component of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. We have done quite a bit of it through the years. We do very little of it now. We have a very good reputation. We have excellent retention. We have amazing group of managers and accounting and admin staff. But, you know, we have 10, 20 plus year experience, again, ex-engineer, and very, very uncommon. And so existing inventory, some tower that's downtown and is 10 years old, and they've had 2 or 3 management companies. The initial one that was put in by the developer, which usually washes out at the second AGM, very difficult to hold on to new developer business. So us coming in and just taking on an existing property, we are inevitably, you know, almost the white knight coming in. And so us just coming in and doing a decent job blows their hair back. And we really aim to do quite a bit more than a decent job. There's quite a bit of work in taking on developer work. Like it starts years in advance of moving these people in. And so when you compare the two, and so without mentioning developers, we have actually an interesting story. We had one reach out to us. And it's a bit of a family. It's a large developer, but it's a bit of a family business. And someone new had come into the business, and they said, hey, we've heard really good things about you, and would you be interested? And I said, actually, we manage 12 of your properties. And he said, well, who did you take them over from? And we're talking like the first one goes back 22 years. And I said, you know, we still have these 12 properties. So we are good at holding on to it, but it does require a tremendous amount of effort, because there can be a perception by those owners who come in, well, you've been put in by the developer, you're in bed with the developer. You're
only here because of that.
Yeah, and you're not going to serve us well because you want that next tower. And every developer that I used to meet with, I said, you know, if we have a partnership here, we're happy to do our job, but rest assured, when there's deficiencies, like our client is the Strata Corporation, so we're going to be bulldogging. Back to your pet breed comment, we're going to be bulldogging on behalf of our clients. So, anyways, long story short, existing inventory is just so much easier to do.
And you touched on, you know, new development goes up, or tower finishes rather, everybody moves in. Oftentimes after 24 months, 36 months, they might move on from that strata management company to a different one. Any reasoning behind that? Just to kind of circle back to that.
So the developer is trying to market his product that they've built. And the management company will come in and will assist with a couple of things. And one is developing that first budget, and the other is with a far more peripheral role, but assisting the lawyer with the bylaws that are going to be implemented and filed at LTO. But that initial budget, man, like it just gets chipped away and chipped away and chipped away. So we come in and like, this is the reality of what, you know, your repairs and maintenance is going to be lower because this is a new product. And if you've built it well, it should be fine for the first few years. But there's certain requirements that the developer has to provide. There's an initial sum or percentage that needs to be in contributed to the contingency reserve fund, but upwards of 9 times out of 10, that very first AGM, actually it's the second AGM because the first one's held almost immediately. You've dealt with reality. You've dealt with how much things cost. You've got a landscaping firm in. You've got, you know, there's some that are pretty easy.
Because oftentimes, just to cut in, because oftentimes you buy pre-sale, or when we've sold pre-sale, the proposed strata fees are peanuts.
Peanuts. And, a really good point to make here, and it's not even just specific to this point, is that when you are an individual who is looking at buying into strata and you're doing your due diligence, low strata fees should be a red flag.
Right. Yeah.
It's indicative of so many things. And it should not be like, oh God, like I can stretch to make this mortgage payment.
More. Yeah.
Because inevitably the funding for, proactive funding for future capital projects, things related to depreciation reports, which is another topic we get into. This is now a requirement. You used to be able to waive that requirement, but jurisdictionally, Ontario, you have to fund your depreciation report. And while funding models are part of the report in BC, there's no requirement that it actually be funded. And if you have a very proactive strata council and strata corporation and ownership group, that can be fine. I managed a property on Bayshore Drive that the late, great Art Phillips, former mayor of Vancouver and founding partner of Phillips Hager North, was the council.
Not from Wilson Phillips.
Side gig. He's just a beautiful human. He was a really nice man, but obviously incredibly bright. And his investment background, he had that strata council or strata corporation just dialed. We had like ladder investments that would be, maturing on an annual basis over 3 to 5 years. And we scoped out things. And this is well before any of these things were required. And so if the towers needed to be painted in 5 years, really good plan in place to, okay, we don't need to, sock away all of our money now, because people do like to have their hands on their own money, and there's opportunity costs and all sorts of things if you're just fully funding these future projects, and you might be moving out of this place in 5 years. So why do I care how much it costs you to paint it in 6? But if a proactive council does that, then when you do levy for these things, or a surprise, envelope issue or whatever the case is, if you could half that special levy by having part of it be partially funded from a contingency reserve fund or a long-term capital fund, it's incredibly beneficial. And so that's the doing of that is going to require a larger strata fee. And so, as I said, like in Ontario, the product itself isn't as expensive. You can buy a condo for less, and you can probably buy two right now.
Yeah. But
the strata management fee, just for a specific example where my world is concerned, it's probably 3x. And that strata manager in Ontario might manage one property, maybe 2 or 3, but not 8, 10, or 12. And so, and they're not a caretaker. They're doing all of the things that I'm saying, these professional level items that need to be addressed for the benefit of the strata corporation. But I, not just because those fees are 3x does that enthuse me. Just having been in this industry for decades, that's a proper way of going about things.
Yeah. And we see that commonly too, like you say, with people saying, oh, the strata fees are less. If we look at 4 towers downtown and a buyer's looking at a 1-bed, 1-bath condo, and they say, well, the strata fees in, XYZ tower are $367 a month, but in ABC tower, they're $180. Like, whoa, that just works for my budget. But like you say, you got to look at more than that. And looking at more than that is the depreciation report. It's the, all these things. What are those? What would be your advice, first time home buyer, or maybe you're moving from a detached home to a condo?
Well, I would start as a prospective owner. I would start with making sure that I had a really good realtor that knew their business. And that's just to sidestep that for a second. That is sort of where our sides of the industry can be at odds, where it is your job to know your product and it is our job to represent the Strata Corporation. And so we have made strides in that area, because when I started, I'd get calls from realtors multiple times a day and just fielding questions. And what about this? And what are they doing about this? And blah, blah, blah. And a lot of it is crystal ball stuff and just an incredible amount of liability. And more importantly, 0% my job. We can't prognosticate what's going to happen. If there's a set of AGM minutes and it's like, okay, we've approved a levy for $2 million for this envelope work, well, then we can speak to that.
Because it's in the minutes.
It's in the minutes. It has been done.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that and have you call me 2 days later and say, I ruined your sale and I've got a nice letter from the lawyer coming. Yeah. So having a good realtor that has takes the time to learn their product, like go through those documents, the depreciation report, engineering report, the last 5 annual sets of minutes, and sort of filter through that. How long has it been with the management company is often telling. As the strata managers, we worked hard with a bunch of real estate boards. It's probably in 2018, and we came up with a white paper, but it was essentially that. Is like the strata management industry is under no responsibility whatsoever to answer any questions that are outside of the minutes.
It's all there for us to read, for your clients to read, for homeowners to read, those sorts of things. But to theorize answers and things like that, that's not your responsibility, nor do you take liability of that, right?
Right.
Diving back into kind of capital expenditures and things like that, oftentimes, again, just being comparative with a property that we're looking at for a buyer, they'll look at one building and it has gym, a sauna, a pool, bowling lane, all these different amenities. Some add values to those individual owners and some people don't use them at all. Where do you see, are those items, are they points of contention when it comes to the AGMs and things like that, and the upkeep, the spending? And when you guys look at these things, are they like, oh man, this building has a pool, it's going to be problematic? Again, looking out for, owners of strata lots and potential buyers and sellers. We had another downtown realtor, Brian Higgins, on. We were talking about a lot of these amenities in the buildings and are they being used? A lot of them get trashed, things like that. But pools obviously being probably one of the bigger ones that cost a ton of money in buildings. How problematic are they?
So from an owner standpoint, I would say it's just so dependent, right? Like if you want the availability and the convenience of having your gym in your tower, that's fantastic. But you're right, by and large, you'll see an uptick just like in any gym. You'll see an uptick right after people make their New Year's resolutions and it gets used a little bit more. But generally it's, Steve in 203 and, and he's the one hammering at the AGM to get a new treadmill in. Me individually, when I first bought into Strata, I wanted zero to no amenities because that requires zero to no maintenance and upkeep and
brings your costs
down
out
of my pocket.
One of the biggest topics that we see a lot of, and a lot of buyers and sellers talk about commonly with strata and condos specifically, is insurance. And the rates over the last, let's call it 10 years, have gone exponentially higher than they once were. What's the biggest cause for that?
Yeah. Okay. So impacts to insurance is actually, it's a global situation. It's catastrophes and capacity. It's a wild one to look back on that hit in COVID. We weren't necessarily in a soft market, but it turned into an incredibly hard market for a number of reasons. But here we are dealing with this pandemic, which was, has everybody completely sideways. Can't even get these ownership groups to meet. And, the technology's come so far, but back then it wasn't, Zoom
wasn't really a thing.
Really a thing. It certainly wasn't a thing for 200 people to pop on a call and have potentially contentious meetings with fractional votings and, it's just craziness.
Can everyone shut their mic off?
Oh boy. And so the overlap there with insurance was an incredibly hard market happen. And it wasn't, there was sort of a perception that it was a little bit opportunistic, but the underlying forces kind of explicable. But the bottom line is, these are incredibly expensive policies. Proportionately to the size of the asset, the strata corporation, the valuation of the building, a small building is going to have a small one, but it'll be, a big chunk of their operating budget. And so you're seeing a tower downtown that had a policy that was, say, $300,000 and it's $6 million.
Right.
There's requirements on paying for something within budget and with available funds. And if you don't, you got to have a special general meeting. But there's a pandemic, so you can't get, it was such a crazy thing to be dealing with the pandemic. We have just to fast forward to now, we've thankfully come well out of that and into a time of a softer market.
So what you're saying is it's normalized a bit, and in some specific cases, it's even come down a little bit since where it was. So it's not as much of a fearful line item when buying or selling a condo as it once was, say, 2020, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's hard to say. It's always going to be there. It's a ton of money. It is an absolute requirement. It does ebb and flow, and we're in a soft market. So a hard one is coming at some particular point. All of these catastrophic events throughout the world affect our insurance. All of the flooding, the fires, it's been a tremendously bad year for that. It's been offset by, I think, locally, an aggregated lesser claims. In talking with the brokerages that we work with, because we're kind of coming up to the end of the year, so we're having these conversations on, where are things going? And they've talked quite positively about that area of things. The interesting thing is, replacement value is one of the things that really drives, because you have to ensure the full replacement value of the tower or towers or townhouse complex. And that is continuing to increase at 6 to 7% a year. So that's always good. And that's pretty steep when you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of these, and million plus for some of these luxury towers downtown. But for a number of these reasons that we've talked about, even that increase is kind of being offset by this softer market and more capacity. When the annual insurance appraisal is done, you're going to have that 6 to 7% increase, but that does not necessarily translate to another 6% increase in the actual premium cost.
I think a lot of people get the minutes. They come through on email from a portal. They get the notices maybe under their door, things like that. In order to really be aware of the strata you're living in, aware of your strata council, aware of all these things. I mean, it kind of goes without saying you should be reading all this stuff. Not everyone does. But what would you say are the most important things for a strata lot owner to be paying attention to on, say, a monthly basis, just so that they're well informed, so they're knowing and understanding, and also having a voice if they need to have one at the AGMs or special general meetings, things like that?
I'll address it by how is a strata corporation? Well, it's sort of predicated on that, because that particular person could be in something that is not that and just be twisting in the wind. If you're not being at least delivered minutes that are written in plain language that is easy to understand, if you've requested financial statements, which is not necessarily normal, but it's certainly a person's right. Some people don't want to see that on a monthly basis. But if it's all plain language and you can understand it, then that's sort of the base level of like just trying to keep well informed. Back to how I dealt with myself, like I got on a strata council so that I could
have a voice
and be at ground level. A really well run strata corporation has a group of volunteer council members that are not micromanaging. There's a high level of trust between us and them. So we work well together. There is transparency on what the agenda is. They are very proactive. So, and that even goes down to just like annual maintenance schedules. They're not, an annual fire inspection is not jumping up in May and they're like, oh shit, we don't have it scheduled. We don't have a cost. We don't have this, that, the other thing. There's so many easy sort of low hanging fruit things that you can be proactive about in a situation that can be so reactive. Like, I don't know that 9F is about to, let its toilet seal go and hit, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for $1 million loss. There's not much you can do about that other than have all the necessary things in place to react as quickly as you can. The simple act of getting people together outside of a really prescribed, legislatively required, put on your powdered wig and you speak when spoken to and this, that, and the other thing, and motion and move second carried and taking votes. You can just get people together, set some expectations like, hey, you have to face each other in the elevator. Yeah. Our expectation here is that you speak respectfully. Everyone gets a chance to say that we don't all agree, but we all live here and we should all, be pulling the rope in the same direction. Having those really easy town hall conversations, sort of informal, the ones that we would do that in advance of a really potentially contentious meeting, I mean, night and day how those would go. Otherwise, you go to this meeting and people come in with their hair on fire and there's rudeness and there is yelling and there's, incredible levels of poor behavior. Yeah. And so fast forward to now with all the technological abilities
you put out a notice, hey, we're going to, redo the parkade membrane, on August 2027. And then you get, as we call it, keyboard warriors. People go crazy, as opposed to, like you say, having the town hall and everyone can, in a civil way, air their grievance, concern, frustration.
The massive, broad stroke thing here is communication.
And a lot of people don't fully understand prior to moving in, purchasing, what they're signing up for. And, that you don't get to decide, how you want to cut the lawn or what color your roof is and things like that. And it's about being on a team and we're all here for the greater good and to stabilize and to increase the value of everyone's strata lots, which kind of spins into the question for any buyer, to kind of have some advice and knowledge from someone in your position at your level. If they're looking at buying a stratified unit, a strata lot, i.e. condo in Greater Vancouver, what is some bullet points of the biggest ticket items to look for when you're going through depreciation report? Is it parking membrane? Is it the roof? And then what are kind of your top 3 to 5 items on what someone should be making themselves and for real estate agents, making themselves most aware of when combing through the Strata documents package when looking to buy a unit?
Yeah, I'd start from the bottom up and read all the minutes and see sort of the
what's going on.
Yeah, when things appear on the horizon and how they're dealt with. The depreciation report, it's for the people who don't know, it's a guideline. It's an inventory. It's usually put together by an engineering firm, and it is, this roof should last 25 years, and here's where it is in its lifespan, and then all the various pieces of mechanical equipment and everything. And then you kind of match the two and see, like, are things actually being attended to? Like, are these strata fees artificially deflated? Is the contingency reserve fund healthy? Is it going to be able to assist with these projects as they come up in, 2030? Because there's funding models that are embedded within the depreciation report. If you aggregate all this information in your noggin with the assistance of the real estate agent, you can kind of see, well, the roof is actually in great shape. And so we're not really going to have to contemplate. Like, there's only so far out you can get. You don't be looking at 2035 and be like, well, I hope we're all still around by then.
And bylaws, right?
Bylaws is huge.
Because it's truly like negative Ned living in 12F, and he's come out of a house in Caulfield for 35 years, and he's moving to Cole Harbor to a 2-bed, 2-bath condo. And he's got a 96-pound German Shepherd, and he likes to smoke indoors and all these kinds of
and he runs
liberties.
A consulting firm, and he's going to have people coming and going.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of here's what you can and can't do.
100%.
Right? That's super important.
Yeah.
So I think the underlying advice throughout all of this is, any unit that you're living in, owning, any unit that you're looking at, what you're looking for is a good strata management company first and foremost. You want to be active as much as you can in terms of town hall meetings or AGMs, things like that when they come up, so that you're well aware of it too.
Yeah.
Having an understanding of your most valuable asset that you have and protecting that asset and hoping that it grows as well.
You want to be reading in those minutes, like, as much as can be possible. You want to see predictability, which really shows a proactive management group, and like with the council and the management company. Like, oh, these things are coming up and they're being handled. There's a story being told in as plain a language as possible. Some transparency. They're transparently reporting on the minutes. This has a flow to it. Here's an issue that came up. Here's what we're going to do about it.
What kind of keeps you busy on a personal side? You got a pretty wicked, awesome family and all those things that keep you busy.
Well, one kid off to university, so I'm drastically less busy in that area now, but still catch the odd Canuck game with him when he gets over. And very entrepreneurial daughter. She's had a couple of jobs over the summer and is now a hostess up in Edgemont. So yeah, the kids are slowly but surely finding things that don't include old dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to getting up on the mountain. There's a little touch of snow up there, and Kim and I trying to plot the next big adventure, and we try to go to as many concerts and
music
and comedy shows as possible. So got some of those on the docket. And, through the company, we should touch on this. One of the philanthropic efforts that we both support and Stratawest has since inception. We just attended the Music Heals Gala at the Commodore last week.
Yes.
So that was fantastic. Super worthy cause, raising money for music therapy, which isn't government funded. So that's back to sort of the enjoyment about the company is making a difference in the community. We're one of the top fundraisers for the Harvest Project here on the North Shore, and do a big Christmas toy drive every year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And the Harvest Project, and it's such a good cause, like you say, here on the North Shore. And the Music Heals has always been so fun, and you bringing us into that, being able to attend that for so many years and seeing the good it's done with music and, so many different avenues and platforms and things like that. It's just been huge.
We'll see where we land this year. I think last year, our group alone, our table and the Stratawest sponsorship, I think the total on that was like $33,000, which is
fantastic.
Pretty incredible.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we got to get out of here because you and I are going to the Canucks game tonight.
Well, we are.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So we got to do that. So for people who want to reach out to Stratawest to talk about if they want to become a Strata property manager, or if they're looking for Strata property management for their own small, big, medium-sized development, those sort of things, how can the people find you and or your company?
Thanks again for having me. Throughout the mumblings here, you've probably grasped the company's name is Stratawest Management. Stratawest.com is a place where you can go. We have a blog there that's actually pretty well viewed. There's some crazy numbers on there, some of the articles. If you are a prospective client, there's an RFQ button that you can fill out some information, or you can just contact myself at Stratawest. If you're more interested in looking more into the side of real estate as a career, you can look at the Sauder School of Business under the real estate division, and lots of good information on the CHOA website, Condominium Homeowners Association. run by Tony Giaventu. He's the gentleman who's on and in the news all the time. And Industry Association, Strata Property Agents of British Columbia, SPA BC. There's that website as well. And I'm always happy to speak to anybody who's interested in being in the industry. I've had tens and hundreds of cups of coffee and even just phone calls for people who want to get in the industry. And it's been interesting 4 or 5 years down the road. Some of those people have come back around and said, hey, I've got the experience now. I want to come work for you. And it's worked out, and they're still with us today. So
that's awesome. And Sutter School of Business, it's organized as a kind of a part of UBC. So I get the benefit, having gone to Sutter School of Business, that I can tell people that I'm a UBC graduate as well, right?
That's a tough answer.
All right, we're out of here.
Okay,
Thanks, Cory. Thanks for hanging out with us. And remember, in Vancouver real estate, nothing's off the table and everything's negotiable. Subscribe now to The Real Estate of Things wherever you get your podcasts.